our meeting on today and welcome everyone. So let's see here. I'll begin with the conflict of interest statements, opportunity for each member to disclose potential conflicts and their belief that they can be unbiased and able to participate, or that they elect to recuse themselves from this matter. You've already been given the January minutes. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
Been moved and proper second. Are ready for the question? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. Minutes are adopted. I don't think we're going to do anything with this, but Bruce, you were recognized for the audit update.
Oh, audit update. Well, let me go up front.
Hold on, before you go any further, Ms. Lester, do we have any public comments?
No, sir.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Audit update, Mr. Chairman. Our audit for 2023 fiscal year is complete, and Dr. Webb and I signed, I hate to say in blood, but we do sign that there are no significant changes since the audit work was completed. It will be dated October 31st, but they left it open until this month, literally, for anything that might have occurred between October 31st and 2/29. And so the partner, David Hunt from Crossland, he had a conflict and knew he was unable to attend today. So I know the board has always preferred to actually have the audit presented where the board can actually ask questions of our auditor. It is complete. It is unqualified, unmodified, no going concern issue, but Mr. Hunt will attend the next board meeting and present the audit to the entire group. So that's the update.
Thank you, Bruce. Let's go to old business. Revenue discussions.
Back again. Dr. Brown and our ophthalmologist here, Dr. Katz, have been spending a lot of time working on this with us. This is related to forensic care. So our forensic population. On February 2nd, we were given 35 patients needing scheduling for surgery, and of those 35, only 2 are still outstanding that need to be scheduled. Similarly, on February 2nd, we were given 46 patients needing endoscopy. 39 of those 46 have been scheduled as of today. Still 7 to go, and they say by the close of business tomorrow, it'll be 0. So Dr. Katz and Dr. Brown wanted to make sure that we all expressed appreciation to the surgery and endoscopy crews and our PA Cat Nash for making sure that we took care of all these and got them scheduled. They haven't been performed, but now they're all scheduled and in process, and that's a good payer for the hospital and people that are legitimately should receive good care while they're in state care. That's it for revenue this month.
Any questions or comments around revenue discussion? Hospital utilization. Ms. Poole, you recognize?
Good afternoon, everyone. So for under Metro utilization, this is about our Metro Healthcare Incentive Program. We are really excited. This time of year, it tends to get a little bit busy. End of last year, we started working with NES and brought them on board. Metro has changed their insurances, like I had stated previously, where they're on 2 Cigna plans instead of a Blue Cross and Cigna. We will be at Metro Action Commission next Friday. That's 300 employees that we will be providing biometric screenings, and some of our providers will be doing breakout sessions with them. And then as we've brought on Nashville Healthcare Center, Metro Center, the Dr. Lightford and Dr. Crown practice, they're right next to Metro Water in that area and closest to downtown. So we'll begin fencing some ads and doing some Google display ads specifically for that area. And then we'll be doing the same when we open up Bordeaux next week. So we've got the library there in the Nashville Fire Department Training Center, which is actually where all new Metro employees have to go each week for new hire training. So lots of opportunity, and we're really looking forward to bringing services out into the community to meet the needs of Metro and their families.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Thank you. Dr. Webb, you're recognized for a new hospital update, relocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick update. Chairman Stevenson and I met with the mayor on January 31st, and basically he is putting together a committee, site committee, that will include a group of individuals that will work towards selecting the appropriate site for the new hospital. So we are awaiting now for the first scheduled meeting. Yeah.
Is it your understanding that the mayor and the council have kind of signed off on moving forward with the new hospital?
Well, actually, the mayor made that commitment during his campaign and post-campaign as he was elected. So he's been pretty much on that page all along. So I'm assuming that he's still there based on his willingness to select a site committee and move forward with locating proper land for the project.
Did he indicate whether he'd be including members of general, so either the executive board or the hospital
absolutely.
board?
Yes, there are. He actually asked if we would submit the membership of the committee. So we submitted a slate of individuals for for the committee that represents a very diverse group.
Thank you.
So let me say this in terms of meeting with the mayor, really good meeting, but I want to just share with you what this means. When the mayor leans into this and he's giving resources to making sure that we can get the very best site in this city for hospital relocation, committing resources, committing expertise, and the leadership from the mayor's office elevates this to another level in terms of opportunity. And so we're very grateful that the mayor's office is providing leadership towards this, and that it's going to feel very collaborative, right? And not as if though we're moving in silo. So the opportunities are great with the mayor, again, lending to us the expertise to move the needle forward on hospital. And he understands, to your point, he made it very clear he understands the position we're in terms of the facility need and the expiration of the lease agreement here. So he understands the urgency towards that. So we were very, very confident after that meeting with the mayor's office and his staff, and even more excited from the commitment to lead site selection, providing leadership in that role. So thank you, Dr. Webb. Any questions or comments on that? Anything else on that? Yes. I sure hope so.
The plan is for the chair to be on the committee. Actually, his name was submitted as a part of that. Maybe I failed to tell you that. No, but yes, your name and among the others are submitted for that.
Okay. All right, so we're ready for new business. We have the CEO Performance Evaluation Report. The committee met, and I'm going to ask Chris if you will give that report and recommendation to the full committee.
Sure, thank you. So we were here yesterday for a minute, and our committee consists of Michelle Brown, Craig Lesser, obviously our board chair, and myself. The agenda for this meeting was to review the fiscal year 2023 goals as set out for the CEO Performance Review Committee, recommend Dr. Webb's discretionary bonus based on these goals. And the third item, which was recommend the 2024 goals. As we began with really only an hour in time, we quickly recognized that we were going to get back together. And I think that's a good thing because we had an opportunity to have some things bubble up and be able to ask for more information, address those, and more clearly define some things, I think, going forward. So obviously, there's been some changes in that committee. Our goal of that committee is to move that committee forward with a more consistent group of individuals, but also in a more timely fashion with set time and dates going forward. So I think that's one of the, hopefully, the positive moves you'll see coming out of this committee. Ms. Brown was not able to be here today. She's the chair of our committee, so she had asked me to lean in today. So fiscal year 2023 goals, recommendations. So again, these were set by a committee that I believe half of the people have changed out. So Mr. Lesser and myself, not being part of the performance time frame, had to lean into our wonderful colleagues here to have us help understand the goals and the recommendations based on the prior committee. So they are as follows: 1, growth; 2, financial; 3, quality; and 4, customer service. And so we were rating Dr. Webb on these pieces. Also identified within these different groups were specific goals. So as an example, with growth, it was the goal was to develop a new clinic on Clarksville Highway and maintain and keep the personnel associated, physicians, et cetera, with that new Clarksville Highway building and opening in the clinic. What we did was we went through each of these. I'm just giving you a little background on the process. We went through each of these 4 things and then decided to rate overall. The maximum component for this performance-based bonus was a 5%, so discretionary 5%. And so we decided to equally weight each of these parameters. And so we went through them all and then we worked on a number. So the second was financial, which the financial component was a successful audit with no ongoing concerns. The third was maintaining a Joint Commission accreditation and NCQA certification for PCMH. The fourth was customer service, providing amazing customer service to patients as evidenced by the patient satisfaction score. So in short, we decided to give Dr. Webb a recommendation and award you 4.75 out of the 5% on the discretionary bonus based on these 2023 fiscal year goals. This will need to be voted at today to approve this, but this was a recommendation coming out of the committee. So any questions about that, I'm happy to answer. But again, part of this is a reporting as a function of half the committee not, being part of the setting the goals. So on that note, going forward, fiscal year 2024, a couple items that came up that some of us had questioned and felt like would be a great opportunity to elevate the experience as we move forward. So in terms of the structure, I mentioned keeping the consistent members so it's not constantly turning, to making sure that we have some best practices, whether that be other local boards of commissions and the way they're evaluating CEOs. We used 2 external vendors in the past with looking at CEO compensation to look at what they might have available since the current methodology was created more in-house. So I think that's, at least based on my understanding, that's the way it's done. So a couple other pieces here is we felt like we wanted to make sure that timeliness in both evaluating the data and then also, very importantly, making sure that the pay raise commensurate with the decision happened. And so one of the things that did come out of this conversation being a 9-month delay in the process was that Dr. Webb was owed potentially a raise, and then it was brought up that also he might be owed some interest. So we are having legal review that to make sure that we can be as accurate and pay appropriately for all the hard work you do. So we want to make sure that that was looked at. We looked at why were the current goals selected and how they tie directly to the CEO's specific performance. So I think that several members on the committee felt that some of the objectives, these 4: growth, financial quality, and customer service, the metrics or the kind of goals and objectives that were tied to those 4 pieces seem to be quite vague and not really understandable, and more specific to what directly Dr. Webb's contribution would be. So we'd like to work on that and tie that to more specific goals. And then some of the self-evaluation pieces were not completed. So again, we want to, moral of the story here is we have an opportunity to provide some excellent feedback and also provide, I think, a more succinct and continuous process to the CEO evaluation. And that is what we hope to do. Any questions on that?
As a member of that committee, if I might just add in support of what Ms. Smith has said, it was a challenge for me to be looking at a performance that was by June of 23. And one of the most important things that came out of this, in addition to the specific review for Dr. Webb, was to make sure that we put this in a more timely process so that you, Dr. Webb, don't have to wait 8 months, 9 months to find out what, if any, pay raise or critique you get on your annual performance when it's so far in the past. We have to create a more timely process, and I think that's about to happen. We've put this behind us now, June of 23. Now we have to do June of 24. We're still behind, but I think we're getting closer to being more appropriate and respectful of you and the process itself with the board. So I think that was a very positive, in the brief time that we had, a positive time to make some positive comments moving forward. And we are, I think, going to meet within the next 3 weeks to continue the process and, again, make it more timely so that it fits and is appropriate for you, Dr. Webb, and for the staff and for the people here at the hospital and for the board to, on a timely basis, be able to review your work. So I think it was a very positive meeting, and hopefully you'll get paid on a more timely basis.
Could you clarify whether this is a pay raise or a performance-based bonus?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Martin. This is a performance-based bonus, this component. There is a 5% pay raise across the board that is a staff pay raise. So that would be, the 4.75 plus the 5%. And I am understanding that the 5% has gone into effect and has been paid in a timely fashion. The concern was that since the performance evaluation had not been given, the rating had not been given, and so the money had not been paid since, the should have been effective date. We just want to make sure that we are giving you some benefit if we could potentially consider that from an interest standpoint. And Chair, other comments?
Yeah, I was going to say the committee did a great job leaning in, and what was unique about this is that so the process had already started. So this new committee had to pick up from what was already started kind of try to patch that together and do that evaluation to get things back on track. The good news about that is that the committee is now going to set the parameters moving forward. That'll be very precise, share it with Dr. Webb, and so we'll be back on track and on time. We've had times when these evaluations have been a couple of years behind, so we don't want to go back to that. So thank you for the committee leaning in. And so there is a recommendation from the committee for 4.75, and I entertain a motion to approve the committee's recommendation.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we adopt the committee's recommendation. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you again for that work. All right, we're now ready for our quality report. Ms. Imes, you're recognized.
The quality report is in your packet. If
Okay.
there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer. I think it's on page 10.
Are there any questions or comments around the quality report?
There are no extraordinary issues, one way or the other. This one? There are no extraordinary issues one way or the other. We've just, do you have any specific questions? I can go over anything specifically for you. I can tell you right now, we're getting ready for Joint Commission survey. Our window opens in October, and we'll start our mock survey hopefully within the next couple of months, maybe May or June.
I just want to make sure in terms of what we're adopting, are we adopting everything that's written in the quality report for approval?
Yes.
Okay.
All the attachments that have to do with the quality report, is that going to be reviewed, or are we in discussion about that? Because I think I've received 5 different pieces on this, so I just want to make sure I understand what we're.
The quality report is the actual quality report is page 10,
Okay.
11, and 12.
Oh. This one. All right. Sorry. The question I had actually in review of this prior to the meeting was really around some of the goals number 3 and 4, both with timely and effective care as well as patient-centered. What are our goals with, what is our goal with some of these categories? How is that determined? And what would we consider acceptable?
Okay, so with the timely and effective care, when we look at this goal, we were having abstraction was out. We were outsourcing that before the first of the year, so our data was 6 months in a lag, which makes it very difficult to do any corrective action or have any corrective action plans for any quality issues. So we've brought that in-house, so we now have real live, timely data. We're getting real-time data on issues. There's not 6 months lag data. You can't fix, Claudies, collapses, all these other things. We can't fix those if it's 6 months data, 6 months lag data. So we brought that in-house. In terms of the patient-centered, the hourly rounding, Veronica, do you have anything you want to add to that for the nursing hourly rounding? It just said all. It's more of a nursing. It just says all metrics are being met. So I just don't know what you guys are doing.
Oh, so,
For hourly
so
rounding.
for us, for hourly rounding, it's really tied to our customer service HCAP scores. And so for right now, under my purview, I have the inpatient HCAP score, which covers all our inpatient floors. And so hourly rounding is one of the initiatives that our nursing staff and our leaders and managers are managing on the floor. They do audits daily and weekly for that. And actually, our HCAP scores right now are pretty high, and the highest they've been. So I think this is just, we submit action plans, it's just a summary. We submit action plans if we find a score that is a little lower, and we were a little lower last year, and hourly rounding was one of the initiatives that we put in place for the organization, and so we're there. So I just had to see what y'all were looking at so I could explain it. Yeah. Good. What else? Okay.
Is there a new EMTALA report, violation determination that hasn't been reported to us before?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm not aware. We had one, I believe, Trudy, at the last, we'd have to check the minutes. I believe we talked about it because we've been doing audits.
Okay.
There's not a
I
new one
thought-
since.
Not a new
there's
one.
not
I
a
thought
new one.
maybe it
There's
was
no
a
new
few
one.
months
There's no
ago,
new
but,
one.
okay,
No,
thank
nothing.
I
you.
don't have on my readers. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
they-
Yeah, and so if you look at this bottom, what we started doing in response to that one that we got in the emergency department, we started doing EMTALA audits regularly, and these are kind of our percentages. And what Trudy has shared with me, so say we were at 95% of complete, documentation. So we may have left out the hospital we transferred them to, but we've coached the staff up to make sure all of those elements for documentation are included. And so we're right there about, our goal is 95% of all elements documented. So this is more of a documentation audit for EMTALA, and it was our action plan in response to the violation that we received.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that we receive this report differently the next time. So I'll get with the staff just so it can be a little bit more precise in terms of what we're approving. But I'll entertain a motion to approve the quality report at this time.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're now on our contracts. Our first contract, thank you, it's a community health marketing. We're revisiting this. This was a roll from last week, and Ms. Poole, you're recognized.
Good afternoon. So the only thing that has changed in the updated analysis that I just distributed is the contract date. It moved from February 1st to March 1st. So on the inside page where it has the monthly, annual, and then total terms, the total terms dropped from 17 months to 16 months on that. So just as a recap from the last board meeting, we submitted an RFP back in October. We submitted it to 15 companies. We also had it on our website so that anybody else could request to participate. If anybody emailed me during that time wanting to do business with us, I referred them to the RFP. Of that, we had 4 respondents and a couple of organizations who did respond that they would not be participating in the RFP. And then we received 3 proposals by the end of the RFP date. Of the 3 proposals, 2 were local companies, 1 was from out of state. We had 2 committees essentially that reviewed the contracts. We had the the contracting division, which was myself as the executive leader over the contract, Susanna Sells as our contract manager, and then our director of contracts, and then Tom Cooper, who is director of procurement. So we reviewed each of the contracts, scored them based on if they met all the criteria within the RFP. Because the 3 were so closely aligned, we went ahead and brought them in to do presentations either on Zoom or here in the boardroom. We had a second group that consisted of divisions within Nashville General Hospital, directors with our School of Health Sciences, with our Nashville Healthcare Diagnostic Imaging, Nashville Healthcare Center, as well as other executive leaders. From that, they again all scored, probably within 10 points for the total. We then went back to the original committee of Susanna, Tom, and I, and we did the fee proposal. And that's really what set the contracts apart. We had 2 contracts that were upwards of $80,000 a month, and the third contract was sitting at under $40,000. So based on the value and where we are today with a lot more focus on our community outreach, we opted to choose community health marketing. Again, it is a 1-year contract or 17-month contract, 16-month, can't do my math anymore. It runs from now until June 30 of 2025. And then it does have an option to extend, but it also has a 30-day out clause. In the Finance Committee, we discussed having monthly board reports for marketing, which gives me the opportunity to get up here and talk even longer. So I think that would be a great opportunity for us to bring some synergy between what's happening within the hospital and with the Hospital Authority Board. Any questions?
Thank you. Has this been approved by Finance Committee?
It has.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? We're on community health marketing.
And I do just want to thank, if I may, Finance Chair Smith and then Mr. Lesser. They both took the opportunity to come in and meet with me, as well as Dr. Blackledge was able to meet when Mr. Lesser was here, and go through the RFP process and each of the different proposals. And it just gives a different level of communication, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As I think you all know, I had some questions early on about the process, but thanks to the time I spent with Kathy going through the entire process, I am absolutely convinced that the process was legitimate, it was on point, it was thorough. I was disappointed at the number of responses we got. And I think it's fair to say, as you all discussed in your Finance Committee meeting, it would be worth investigating why, out of the pretty large number that you sent out notice to, that we only got 4 responses and then 3 actual returns. But I think it was worth the time to go through all this in detail, because the work of this hospital is so important. And the work that is attempting to be done in terms of a new hospital, in terms of outreach to our patients and to the citizens of Davidson County, to make sure that we have the support we need to raise money, to find a site, to do all of those things that are part of what this hospital aspires to. It's very important that if good things are happening here in the building, that's not enough. It's got to be communicated appropriately, properly, directly, succinctly, and timely to all of the important audiences we have. And that runs the gamut. So I think it was worthwhile to go through this, even though it delayed the process some. But I know I'm satisfied that we are in a better shape now to do the things that we want to do. But we do have to hold this organization, the organization that won the contract, or is about to win the contract, I believe, we have to hold their feet to the fire. And that's why I think it's important for us to get a report from them every single month at the board so that we understand and we can work together to move forward to achieve the goals that Dr. Webb and the staff here are trying to achieve.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Les. You know what? Each one of us bring a level of expertise to this board, and you leaning in terms of our communication and our marketing was very, very helpful. So thank you for providing that expertise to the board. All right, if we're ready to vote, I'll entertain a motion to approve the community health marketing contract. Second. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. We're now on the CMS imaging contract. Dr. Mark Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The CMS contract is a point of service contract for the outpatient CT scanner. And what we're seeking is an approval for the point of service. We currently have a 24-month warranty that's in effect, but after that 24 months, then we would have to get a maintenance contract. Like I shared with the finance board, my 38 years in imaging, those contracts normally run between 80 and 110,000 a year. As you can see, this is, if you get them at point of service, there's a huge discount for those. And it also, once it kicks in to effect, we won't have to get what we call in that field glassware, which is the rotations that they're talking about on the coverage. And that's additional coverage that would be needed if we didn't get this service, or this agreement approved.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Finance Committee?
We reviewed this contract, and the Finance Committee discussed this at length and unanimously approved this coming to the board.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
So this is a $58,000 a year contract that
Yes.
begins in 24 months?
Correct.
Okay. And it's 5 years at $58,000 a year?
Correct.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved?
Second.
Been moved and properly second. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. We're now ready for Dr. Brown, your second contract, Prime Pathology.
The Prime Pathology is a pathology contract. Since we can't legally hire pathologists, radiologists legally, we propose that we bring on a PLLC contract for this services. We've sort of went over the details in the Finance Committee as to why we're doing that. The provider that has taken on this LLC used to work for Meharry Medical College, but was leaving. He was our medical director for the lab, and we talked about the reasons and regulations why we need to retain this resource. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Brown, thank you. Finance?
Our Finance Committee has unanimously voted to approve the vendor contract with Prime Pathology.
Thank you.
Recommends it.
All right. Questions or comments on this contract?
Was our previous contract with Meharry?
No, Meharry still provides pathologists in the lab. So, but they weren't the medical director of the lab, and the medical director requires different requirements in order for the lab to stay open, and so that was the reason why.
But this is a contract with this entity.
Correct.
And it looks like that the contract is $410,000, and then there will be a medical director fee on top of that.
Correct.
What were we paying before and to who?
We were paying $98,000 a year for to Meharry, which we're still paying that for the point eight pathologist that they provide for that service. The pathologist that we're employing only worked here 10 days a week. I'm going to say 10 days a month, and that's not going to be enough coverage to maintain our laboratory accreditation.
Just to try to understand the change. So we were paying $98,000 for what is now going to be $460,000 plus 98.
Yes.
Yeah, so we talked a little more about this. I think Dr. Martin had a series of questions to better understand the change, which does seem significant. Why would you pay 98 and turn around and pay 460? But I think that there was some change in the employment that had caused some of this kind of precipitation to happen.
Yes.
And that was a needed and now required action with regard to having the medical director position specifically to keep the lab open. So that change of employment from the 0.8 to now a full-time plus another 14 days on call is a reason you've gone from a kind of sideline gig to a full-time pathologist who's also running your lab. So I think that is the difference in your salary. I am not a medical doctor, nor do I run a hospital, but that is my understanding of the way this works.
You're right, Ms. Smith.
Thank you. I'm learning. There's hope.
So who will cover when this pathologist is gone?
The current pathologists. We have pathologists that are in the lab, but some of them don't have the full capability to coverage for the medical director aspect of it. So that's why we had to end up hiring a pathologist.
Dr. Miller, is there concern over the cost or is there concern over the actual position change? I'm just trying to more clearly define what maybe we can receive some more information on.
I mean, it seems that we had a service that was with Meharry, and because one of their pathologists is leaving, it's now going to be basically an additional $450,000 charge to us.
Well, I'm going to say it like I shared with the finance committee. If that pathologist leaves, you won't have a lab.
I guess my question is, what kind of services, what's the difference in terms of the services being provided?
The difference in services, Dr. James is full-time at one point. When he was employed before, Dr. James approached us because he was leaving.
Okay.
He didn't want to teach and be medical director. Okay. So that was the whole precipitous for even engaging in a conversation, because you wouldn't have a you wouldn't have a medical director. Some of the other pathologists don't meet the requirement to be the medical director and meet the regulatory requirements.
Dr. Brown, can you speak to the professional fees that's associated with that?
Right. By bringing Dr. James on, we would garnish his professional fees and continue to receive our facility fees with him coming to the NGH side.
When he was employed by Meharry, did they get the professional?
They got the professional fees, correct.
So that's part of the difference.
Right.
In terms of the money is.
We would garnish his.
Will be getting the money
right.
instead of Meharry will be getting it.
Right, exactly.
So that's the offset.
Okay, that's the part I was trying to figure out.
Is this a service that, say, if we were to ask an independent lab like Associated Pathologists or LabCorp, that they would be willing to contract with a hospital to do this same service?
we've never explored. We do send some of our labs out currently, and some of that is due to we don't have a full-time pathologist that we send out to ARUP. So we would garnish some of those revenues back. So there is an offset and then we send out stuff to local places here in town. We do send some to Quest, some to Vanderbilt, and other places currently.
So would that stop the need
Yes,
to send
that-
out anything?
Yes, well, I would stop totally sending out because some things we just don't perform, but it would lower the cost of us sending things out like the ARUP and other places here in town.
So you'd recoup those costs?
Correct. So it's not just a total one-to-one.
Any further discussion?
The only thing I might add for a comfort level perspective, Dr. Miller, is maybe we, at the end of a full year where Dr. James has been here performing services, it might make sense to review the overall financial structure to see if, to actually look at the financial results and the other intangible results of timeliness and effectiveness, but also the fees that we're sending out to third parties, to your point. So maybe we should do that within a year, and that way we can decide if we need to go down a different route at this point.
That might also be helpful with a number of the different contracts that we review, because that question typically comes up, what is the expected revenue in comparison with the cost? And so I know it may not always be feasible when it is appropriate. It may be helpful to have some type of estimate or goal or budget or what you anticipate a return on that investment would be, again, when applicable.
Right, and then I think Ms. Smith just brought up availability for the providers in the hospital when they need something reviewed. They normally would have to call Dr. James. He would have to, on his days when he come in, review that or come over to review it. So I think that availability as far as patient care would be also expedited by having a full-time pathologist here.
I think as a tertiary level hospital, you don't just outsource your lab. There are a lot of elements of that position. It's teaching, there's education, there's joint commission, there's accreditation, there's licensing, there's collaborating and responding to colleagues who have questions that might come up as a part of a specimen that they might have submitted that he can educate on. So there's a lot more to it than just running some lab tests. So maybe we would do better by just explaining the scope of services that we're acquiring here, as opposed to just looking at it from a financial standpoint.
When he announced that he's leaving Meharry, did Meharry offer to replace his services with another hire at Meharry?
I did not hear from whoever he reports to. No, they did not, Dr. Miller.
I guess, will they give them an opportunity to provide somebody,
This conversation with Dr. James has been going on. Ms. Rogers, actually, Mr. Pence is the one who brought it to my attention that Dr. James was going to leave. And Rick, do you remember what that time frame was? It's been a minute.
It was right around the holidays when he first talked about him, because he was overloaded on teaching. Do I need to come up there? Okay. Sorry. Dr. James, he taught a full load at the medical college, and then also he would come to the lab to perform his services. And then, like I said, the lab being probably the most regulated department in the hospital, we've got 4 accrediting agencies that we're responsible for as far as with Joint Commission and the state CLIA and the blood bank, AABB for our blood bank. And for that particular one, we have to have availability 365, 24/7 when it comes to blood bank. And Dr. James is available for that. And that is a requirement. But he was missing with the overload from Meharry. He mentioned back right around between Thanksgiving and Christmas what he was thinking. And so that's kind of the time frame on that.
Full teaching load with Meharry, I would assume Meharry has to replace him with somebody to pick up that teaching load.
Yeah, and I'm not
I'm
privy to what Meharry
somebody
did.
stepped from, when they stepped into his spot for the teaching pod,
Right.
would that person be available to step into this role as well? Or was that even discussed?
Not with me.
Yes, I'm not, it wasn't discussed, Dr. Burley. Not to me, it wasn't.
I mean, well, I guess Meharry didn't all.
Dr. Burley, pull your mic close to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't get used to that. I guess my question was Meharry okay with that, or did they have any comments about it? Or
I haven't received any comments to date, Dr. Burley, one way or the other.
okay.
So two components to this. One is you all have to do what's in the best interest of the hospital, and then the other piece of it, I think some of my colleagues are saying, are we being good partners and acting in good faith? And I think some of the questions are around just being reassured that as we take care of the business of the hospital, that we're also being good partners, right? So anytime you hire from a partner, that could be weird, right? And so,
Well, I guess he's known for being the employee to
There you go.
keep my hand off of it. Okay, I got it. He's going from being their employee to being our employee, essentially. And, I can understand him not wanting to work there, but I guess it's just was an opportunity for them, since there was a relationship ongoing, for them to replace him in that role as well.
Correction, hospitals can't employ
Oh.
pathologists. You can only contract.
You can only contract, like ER docs.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not just about partnership, right? Aren't we contractually obligated to have Meharry staff when they can provide them?
Under the PSA that existed, there are certain services, yes, that we do work with Meharry. But, the priority is to maintain an accredited lab. So if he leaves and we have no one, we can't make it a priority that we have to honor a relationship with someone else. The relationship that we have is with our patients. And to maintain an accreditation, we are a tertiary hospital, level 3 trauma center, and there are certain things that we have to do. And I noticed that there are a lot of priority discussion about partnerships, but at the end of the day, we do have to take care of our patient population. And if we lose our licensing or accreditation in our lab, then this board is going to be having a whole nother discussion with us.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate and agree with that. I guess the questions Dr. Burley was asking and others is, we just like to know that Meharry was given the opportunity to fill that position.
We always try to honor the relationships that we have with our partners, or with anyone that we have a contractual relationship with. But at the end of the day, we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of our patient population.
thank you, Dr. Webb. Any more questions or comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make the motion.
Been moved and proper second. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. All right, we'll now go to our medical staff report. Will somebody be reporting on behalf of Dr. Williams for information? Okay, we'll go to
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Dr. Williams last time reported that the medical staff had rejected the bylaws,
Yes.
and he didn't know the reason for it. And we made a request from the board that we would have someone from the medical staff talk to us about why they wanted to reject those bylaws. I was hoping that we would have that physician talk to us today.
I think we want to probably.
I'm not a physician, but I can talk. I'm not a physician, but I'm happy to answer questions that I can around the bylaws. So can you repeat what's the question?
The question is, why did the medical staff vote the bylaws down?
I can't answer to, it was a survey vote with 44 responses, and the majority of the responses were to vote it down. I can't answer specifically why their reasonings would be. I can tell you my personal thoughts, but I don't really want to give any specifics on my personal thoughts on that. What I do understand is they didn't agree with there were certain things they didn't agree with. They were just not opposed to it. I don't want to go into details on it.
So I will make my request for a second time that I would like to hear from the medical staff what we can do to satisfy them with these bylaw changes.
Yes, let's get with Dr. Williams and let's prepare that for our next meeting.
I can tell you the request from the medical staff was that we change what is compliant, what would make us compliant through Joint Commission and CMS on the bylaws, so we can at least get the bylaws compliant. The rest of the language we could hash out at a later time. So that was what was put on the table.
We'll add that at our next agenda, next meeting on that as an agenda item. Thank you. Dr. Burley, credentials report.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to scoot over to this thing this time. All right, let's find out here. Okay. Additions to changes in the medical staff. We had one individual, Dr. Craig Turnovitz, moved from provisional to active staff. He's with general surgery. We had a couple of our teleradiologists and telemedicine docs. Actually, both of these were teleradiology, moved from provisional to active staff. We did have also some reappointments, and these individuals will be credentialed from March 1st through the 2/28 of 2026, and that is Dr. Bilal Abdul Ali in internal medicine. He's a working hospitalist. Dr. Ronald Dudek in obstetrics and gynecology, and these are reappointments. Dr. Katrina Marie Green in emergency medicine. Eric Brian Matzenbacher, also in emergency medicine. And Dr. Naomi Indira Sudin Pascal, obstetrics and gynecology. And these are all reappointments. We had temporary privileges granted to Dr. Nguyen and Dr. Nezaru. Dr. Nguyen in obstetrics and gynecology, Dr. Nezaru in internal medicine. And we had several resignations from the staff. The majority of those were in the contracted services of teleradiology and emergency medicine. And it's my understanding there's always a high turnover in those individuals filling those roles. In terms of the specialized staff, and this consists basically of PAs and nurse practitioners. We had PA Catherine Nash in general surgery, Catherine Powell in emergency medicine. These are provisional to active staff. And we had reappointments of, I keep wanting to say doctor, of Anna Napier in emergency medicine, Megan Adams, emergency medicine, and Lucas Ryan Spence was a resignation from the emergency medicine rotation. And I would move to have the report approved for those actions taken.
I have a quick question. With the 6 medical staff resignation and the 1 SPP staff resignation, is it our practice to do exit interviews with these individuals to find out? You said this was high turnover in the teleradiology specialty.
That has come up before, and for those positions, not typically. When we have some long-standing members who've been on the medical staff, typically we will do some type of exit interview with them. I know that's come up and back and forth over time.
I'm just curious. I think it would, for purposes of consistency, I mean, I would think that you would give that opportunity to whoever's leaving, because there might be, something we could learn from the data. Thank you.
I tell you, we can take that back to the medical staff and see how to coordinate that, because it'll be coming from them anyway. So we can try to see if we can coordinate that activity with them.
Any other questions or comments? Pardon me. Yes, I'll take a motion now to approve the medical credential report.
So moved.
All in favor, vote by sign of aye. All opposed, ayes have it. All right, we're now ready for our finance report. Bruce, you're recognized. Smith.
First on the agenda, just a brief update on the audit. We did discuss it at the Finance Committee, but our audit is complete. It's an unmodified opinion, no going concern issues. But I did want to just let you know that our partner, the partner from Crossland over our audit, Dave Hunt, he was unable to be here. He had a larger client that he had to be at in Indianapolis today, so he will be back to present the audit to the board at next board meeting. So just wanted to give you that update. Second is our budget. Last year, if those of you who are on the committee from last year might recall that Law Director Dietz had a conversation with Dr. Webb and I last year, recommended strongly, which I think he's correct, that we should bring the budget, even though it's early, to this board for initial approval before we bring it to Metro and to the mayor's office, et cetera, for review. And so that's what we're trying to do here today, is I'm bringing an initial budget. It has 6 months of actual through December, and then projected for the 6 months coming, and then for July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2025. So I want to just go through a few assumptions, the way we put this together. We have a 3% growth rate overall in our same store. So an existing service, existing clinic, we're applying a 3% growth rate for the emergency department visits, observation, and other hospital admissions. Same on our clinic visits, with the exception of our Bordeaux clinic, just opened in February. Our imaging center there just is going to open probably in April. So I'm going to have a full year of those in the budget for 2025 budget year. Similarly, the Metro Center, we have 2 busy senior-focused primary care doctors at that clinic that started on February 5th. They see a substantial number of patients, and so that is projected into our 2025 budget year as well. And then our outpatient services just generally here at the hospital and in the clinics is 3%, but the imaging center will be net new, so it is based on the projections for the imaging center with a little bit of haircut because some of the imaging that goes to the freestanding center will have an impact on things that used to come here for outpatients. So we're making a little bit reduction here. So those are kind of the basics. If you go on to the next. So I said the 2 new clinics, Bordeaux and the Metro Center, and then those providers, they're individually budgeted. The 2 fellows at the Metro Center, we have their prior 24 months of activity, so we're using that projection for theirs. Roughly, they produced almost $3 million in collected fees in the prior year, so a pretty busy practice, senior focused. And then we also had some doctors that joined us partial year in 2023 or in this year, 2024. Dr. Sands is an internal medicine, primary care physician. Dr. Tunya is an internal medicine physician, and Dr. Maliakal is a GI physician. So we took either their most recent 3-month or 6-month trend. We bumped it either 5 or 10% based on projections going forward, and that's what we use for those services. Dr. Kelly is a relatively new cardiologist here at the hospital. Dr. Nguyen is an OB-GYN doctor that's actually employed by the hospital. And then the 2 fellows at Drs. Lightford and Crayon are at the Metro Center. They were added in February 2024. So I just want to, next one, please. And then annually, we increase our charges. Now, that's just what we charge. It's not what we receive, but we increase our charges annually 5%. For almost all services. There are a few exclusions. Professional fees typically are more market sensitive. We can't just increase them 5%. We use Medicare reimbursement rates, and basically 2.5 times that becomes our charge for our professional fees, levels 1 through 4 and 5. The same for high-cost drugs and supplies that are chargeable. We have a markup that's basically 300% of acquisition costs in those spaces. Then for general supply, we increased 4%, and this is based on our group purchasing organization guidance. Vizient, which is a big national GPO, they are saying general supplies 4%. Pharmacy costs about 6%. Both of those are less than they were last year, but they're still rising. And then we did budget a 5% sort of general wage increase in the hospital for all employees that have at least 1 year effective July 1, 2024, and that is in the budget as well. And as this is a big one for us, other revenues. So we typically hold, we never know exactly how we're going to get paid by the state and federal government for essential access, DISH, and so forth. Those are sometimes they're pool related. If you see PHSPP, that's a public hospital supplemental pool program that we've been in for 14 years. This year, for the first time in probably 4 years, it actually increased. It went from roughly 7 million to almost 13 million. There are only 4 hospitals that are in that pool, and it's a $100 million pool. And I think because of COVID last year, some of the bigger hospitals, the Erlangers and the Med, they received very large amounts of dollars from the federal government that we were not privy to. And so that basically created, they had to acknowledge those dollars. And so it meant that we got a larger share of the pool this year than traditional. I hope that holds for the year that we're entering, but I can't say for sure. So we just held the number at 13 million for supplemental pool. Our Medicare cost report we filed is about 3.6 million. We believe that'll stay static, maybe slightly up. Essential access and DISH and graduate medical education federal, we believe to be flat. That's about the best we're likely to do. I will say in the 2023 fiscal year. For the first time, the hospital received $1.1 million from the state for graduate medical education. State GME, not federal, but state GME used to go to the medical schools, whether it's Vanderbilt, Meharry, UT, and in 2023, the state of Tennessee, under pressure from CMS, agreed to change their practice, and they started paying the hospitals for the state GME for the medical schools. So it was not anything that we sought. It was actually a change invoked by the state of Tennessee. So in 2023, the hospital actually received 4 $260,000 payments for GME. That money, or probably more than that, used to go to Meharry Medical College. But this year, we have not been able to get any thus far because we now have to provide resident schedules real time. So for the quarter that July 1 to September 30, I have to have Meharry's resident schedules for all their programs and the attendance, et cetera, real time. Historically, we get that 6 months in arrears, and that's how we file our Medicare cost report. So we're still trying to gather this information from Meharry real time. It's a change for us and for them, but right now we've not been able to get those schedules and submit them to the state. So for the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year, we have not been able to secure those GME funds. We hope that if we can file them before the year is out, we will be able to reclaim those 2 quarters and the quarter that we're in now. But I can't say for sure right now. We are working with Meharry. It's new timing for them. We do have their schedules for the past fiscal year, and we filed that cost report. But for this year, we do not. And so that's a challenge. It's $1.1 million that we'd like to see not only this year, but next year. And then this is the actual budget. On the left side, you can see is the 6 months of actual and then the projected next 6 months of the fiscal year that we're in. And it's an imprecise process because we're looking out for a July 1 start date, so it's really 18 months in the future that we're sort of budgeting here. And so you can see increases in overall revenue in the hospital. You can see our collected revenues, the net patient revenue numbers moving from 54 million to 61 million. Now, about 3 million of that's a big increase, but 3 million of that is from the new clinic that we acquired in February, and then the outpatient imaging center and the Bordeaux Center. So what looks like a large leap is not as large as probably it appears. Same store, it's about a 5% increase, but we do have some new service areas that we're adding into the budget. Our salary expenses and other expenses are up. In our salary number, it looks a little bit high, even to me, but I've been through it many times. It is the fact that we brought on a good number of providers during the partial year, and then the new ones that we just brought on in February. So that's driving that number. Physician salaries are higher than our standard, and then the support staff to support those other clinics. So the request at this point, based on these numbers, the request for our mission from Metro government would be roughly $63 million and would leave us with a small positive operating margin of about $1.5 million for the budget year. And again, we will be back to this committee again because undoubtedly when we close another month or two, the projections will move a little bit, but we do think we're going to try to keep as close as we can to these numbers. As new employees come and go, our salary numbers update in real time into the budget system. So some of these numbers will move around, but I don't think they'll move around substantially. And then we'll hear Dr. Webb and I present to the mayor's office and Metro on Tuesday of next week. So we were seeking budget approval for this initial budget, and then we will be back again after probably sometime in May or June when we know what the mayor's office and council recommends for the hospital. And so there will be an updated budget that will ultimately have to be approved by Finance Committee and Board sometime in the May to June timeframe before the new fiscal year starts July 1. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So the ask for metros going from 65 to 68, is that right?
No, it's gone from 57.8. We asked for 60 last year. They granted us 57.8. So it's going from 57.8 to 63.
And will there be a capital?
There's no capital in
capital.
this. There's no capital in this. This is just the operating budget.
Okay. And then will there be any adjustment for changes in cardiology capacity, or are we going to be able to maintain cardiology capacity? And then is the cath lab going to be down because of renovations, those kinds of things?
Now, I'm going to tell you that what we have budgeted right now, Dr. Miller, is pretty much same store. Now, you know, the cardiology contract is being terminated, but the cardiology service is being replaced with employed physicians in those same spaces, maybe some other services. So I'm not projecting a significant increase. I'm not projecting a decrease.
And will the cath lab renovations take place in this next budget year, or?
I'm looking at Dr. Brown. He probably would be better suited to respond to that. Please.
Normally, when you do a renovation of an imaging and you only have one service available, we bring in a mobile to offset the downtime for the renovation and the implementation of the new system. So Mr. Elmore has no need to go one way or the other as far as the renovation is concerned.
So that's part of the plan. I didn't realize that we were going to bring in a mobile.
Yes.
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Are the only two outpatient clinics Metro Center and Bordeaux now? Wasn't there one?
Well, Charlotte.
Okay, that's
we
what
still have Midtown, the Midtown location. Yes.
Seen comments about
Well, but
them.
it's been in space for almost 5 years now, so it is pretty mature. Yeah.
Okay.
It's in these numbers, yes.
It's included in
Yes,
there. Okay. I just
absolutely.
didn't see it
Sorry.
when I go
I just wanted to tell you the ones that were net new because
Okay.
they're not in my current, when I say same store, it's ones that have been with us through several cycles.
Profitable?
It's busy. I can't tell you it's profitable, but yeah, it's
Okay.
busy.
Well, since it's been there 5
No,
years.
the only issue with a Charlotte location is the patient population is a good bit younger, say, than the population that we will have at Metro Center and at Bordeaux. And I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that 40-year-old people don't use hospital services as frequently as 66-year-old people. So I do think that there's going to be a lot more downstream from these other two clinics. Nothing against the Charlotte clinic. It's a great location and a good service, but the patient population there is 40 to 45 on average.
But it's busy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Other questions?
Any other questions? We do understand this is a working budget, so it has opportunity to shift. And any other questions? All right, we do need to approve this budget, so I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved proper second. All in favor of approving the budget, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. All right, we'll move now to our November and December reports.
Yeah. You got them? Okay. So this is the stats page. I'm going to try to move through this pretty quickly. We covered it in the Finance Committee. The November volumes were down a little bit from October, about 13% below the budgeted number for admissions. Patient days were pretty low. Length of stay was very low, which is a success, moving patients through. Emergency visits down a bit to just below 2,200. Our clinic visits in November were down, but it was holidays, and we typically budget straight line for the clinics. So 3,060 visits versus 3,500 in the budget. Our surgery and our outpatient surgery volumes were down, pretty common for a November timeframe. And our case mix was relatively low, 1.37, a little behind the budget. On the income statement side, our gross revenues, patient revenues, 23.7 million, about 2.5 million behind the budget for the month because of the lower volumes than projected. But our net revenue, so the patient net revenue that you see there at 4.9 million, that was actually better than budget because we've had very successful collections month, and we also had a better payer mix in the month of November than typical. So we actually were slightly ahead of budget on net revenues for the month. Our other revenues, essential access in particular, were well above the budget for the month. And so all in, total net revenue was almost $13 million for the month. Our expenses were roughly 12.3. And so we had a positive operating margin again of $619,000. The budget was a loss of $900,000, positive difference of roughly 1.5. And if you cross over to the year to date, 5 months into the fiscal year, the hospital's at a $6.3 million positive margin, which is really, anchored by good volumes, but also the state and federal revenues that we received thus far this year. It's encouraging. So that's our November. It's an excellent first 5 months of the fiscal year, and then as a side note, I know I've probably whined about it in previous meetings that we haven't had access to that $7 million from the state, from the Metro government for capital. Yesterday, we did finally get the green light, and we have started submitting the first, I think it was $1.4 million yesterday. We've spent about $4 million mid-February on capital that we have ready to be reimbursed out of that $7 million. So that'll help our cash flow situation significantly. And so, I'm going to say green light, and we're sending those claims in now for reimbursement. Questions for November? All right, ready to hear December?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. December volume, a little bit busier, 213 admissions. Patient days almost 900, still a little 10%, 11% below the budget. Our length of stay rose a little bit, but still well below the budget for the year, for the month and for the year to date. Emergency visits were up to 2,350, right on the budgeted number and above the prior month. And our ER admissions were above budget. Clinic visits dropped off. We had weather issues and, of course, holiday issues, so they were again well below the budget for the month of December. Inpatient surgery was basically flat with the prior month and similar on outpatient cases. Cath lab was right on its numbers. Deliveries were low, both November and December. But like I said at Finance, that's a fluke because deliveries were high again in January, and they just move up and down. So for the month, from an income statement, just shy of 23 million in gross revenues. We didn't have as good a payer mix or collections month in December, but still collected right at $4 million, but that's a negative 1.1 compared to what we had budgeted for December. So unlike last month, our total net revenues, instead of being 13 million, were 11.4. So we had a negative 1.7 variance from budget on net revenue. Our expenses also were about $690,000 higher than budget. Most of that is salaries and contract labor, of course. And so for the month of December, a clinker, we actually had a negative margin of about $1.1 million. And in the month of December last year, we received a large payment from the federal government of 2.7. So we budgeted it again. We didn't get it this time. It didn't happen in December. So we missed budget for December by $2.5 million, which is pretty ugly, yet for the year-to-date, 6 months in, we're at a $5.1 million positive margin. We were supposed to be at a -3, so I'll take that, even though it was a bad December month. So year-to-date, we're $8 million ahead of budget, and that's a positive. Questions?
Questions or comments on our December financial report?
Move approval of the financial reports.
I have a motion to approve the November and December financial report. Can I get a second? Been moved and properly second. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. All opposed?
Thank you.
Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, Dr. Webb, you're recognized the CEO's report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to begin my report with introducing the newest member of our executive team, Dr. Alicia Fair, right here, is... Do I need a microphone, Dr. Webb? No, you don't. Not right now. She is coming in as Chief Population Health and Research Officer. She's also a grant writer, which will be a great addition to our team. Coming on board in March 11th will be our Chief Development Officer, who will be also responsible for heading up the foundation as the Executive Director. Her name is Jennifer Baylog, and as I said, she'll be starting on March 11th. So, welcome aboard, and look forward to working with you, and I know we're going to be doing some great work in population health and research. Yes.
Can you explain what that means?
What's that?
Population health?
Okay.
What does that mean?
Population health is actually when you study, review, and utilize the health outcomes of a population and how those outcomes are distributed within a certain environment. Then there's population health management, which implies that you're going to create interventions to change those outcomes. So in order for us to be able to contribute to both science and policymakers about the conditions of certain populations and the outcomes and interventions that should be in place on a larger scale, local, state, federal, it's a use of data and gathering data and using that as analytics to transfer it into knowledge so that you can make informed decisions about how you're going to care for a certain patient population. Okay, all right. The ribbon cutting for the Bordeaux Clinic was held, and we were graced with the presence of 3 of our board members, Dr. Hudson, Dr. Martin, and Mr. Lesser. Thank you all for coming. I think we all agreed that that was a great event. We had some good media coverage. Channels 2 and 5 were there, as well as the Nashville Post. And we should be transitioning to full opening of that clinic during next week. And last Tuesday, February 20th, I participated in the THA, Tennessee Hospital Association, on the Hill Day, Capitol Hill. I spent time with a majority of the Davidson County delegation. I met with 7 state representatives, one-on-one, and 3 senators. It was a very busy day. And we're receiving good verbal support from them, and also should be seeing some follow-up from several of them in some of the efforts that we're bringing forth. Upcoming events, our kids, the organization, which by the way is a division of Nashville General Hospital. They do some extraordinary work with kids that have been sexually abused. Well, they will be having one of their major fundraisers this weekend on Sunday, the Soup Sunday event. And if you have not attended a Soup Sunday by our kids, you are missing a treat. I think we still have some tickets left if anyone wants to attend that. It's an extraordinary event. So it's going to be held from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Sunday at the Titan Stadium on the club level floor. March 30th is National Doctors Day, so we will be planning some events here for our physicians, and we certainly welcome you to attend those. The SEIU 205, which is the Service Employees International Union, will be hosting a community town hall on April 14th. They're still working on the site for that, and that's going to be from 3 to 5 p.m. I believe that's a Sunday, and so that will be from 3 to 5 p.m. We will update you on the actual location as soon as they are able to get that to us. April 23rd is our Nashville General Hospital's 134th birthday. We will be hosting some events that we will be making you aware of as that time comes about. That is all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Our kids event is this Sunday?
Yes, this Sunday. It will be between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Need to get there early so you can get the best soup.
You got to get the table.
Yeah. You will appreciate that event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Webb, for your report. I don't have a report, so that concludes our regular agenda items. Our next meeting is Thursday, March the 28th at 4 p.m. And I want to say thank you to those committees that are meeting and leaning in on some of the work that we do outside of this. So again, appreciate all of that work. I think that's it for us.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could I
Absolutely.
bring up one thing? Dr. Webb brought up a really good point for our board, which is our board is primarily responsible for the care of our patients and to maintain accreditation. That is our primary role. But I'm a little concerned about our relationship with Meharry, and I think that we don't have a good feel for some of the needs that Meharry feels they need from our hospital. You know, I worked in this hospital when we transitioned to this location, and you know, one of the reasons we moved to this location is to create a partnership with Meharry. We need some input from Meharry of how we can work with them closely to meet their teaching needs. And I don't know whether anybody on this board has any suggestions of how we can enhance that partnership and both benefit.
When you say we, are you suggesting the board or the executive team?
I would say collectively, the board and the executive team.
Dr. Webb, I wanted to give you an opportunity. I'm sorry.
It was my understanding that the whole idea of having the board members go to Meharry and meet with the staff and the leadership there was that we're working on that process. I thought that was the whole idea in doing so. And so are you asking if we're looking to kind of continue that process, or?
I mean, I think that some of us have had input from Meharry, but what are we going to do with that input?
Just to be clear, this is cryptic. Getting input. Can you elaborate on that, or what?
Well, I think that there, we alluded to it earlier, and I think that a lot of the people on this board sensed it earlier when we talked about the professional service agreements for pathology services, and there is concern on the Meharry side that we're not taking full advantage of the professional service agreements. We may be doing everything that we can do and maintain the operations of this hospital, but I will say that from my conversations, there's concern on the Meharry side that they would like to be more involved in the staffing of the hospital.
So if I might just take you through a little bit of history, not to get too much into the weeds. When I came here in 2015, majority of the services that were provided, medical services, were provided by Meharry Medical College. And that led to the PSA. And that's what the PSA was based on. Over time, Meharry voluntarily removed those services and no longer provided those services. So we began to hire in so that we could continue to carry out the mission of the hospital, and that is to provide the care to the patient population so that there are no inequities and health disparities. So we needed to hire physicians to cover the full scope of services of the hospital as they removed those services. And so I don't know how else to address that other than we only did what we had to do to continue to provide those services when one party voluntarily removes those services. I'm not sure how you want us to deal with that other than when we see that there is a void in a service or there's about to be a void in a service, we have to move quickly to make sure that those services are provided. Now, any type of relationship that Meharry wants to explore, we're certainly willing to do that. Right now, we have an internal medicine clinic, which is our largest clinic here at the hospital, and it takes care of all the individuals that come to us that are indigent. We supply the staff, supplies, equipment, technology, and space. We cover all of those resources, the cost of those resources, and they're able to bring their students into that setting and teach their students. But all of the overhead we cover, including the space which we lease from Meharry. For the inpatient care, we have Team Health, and we, as a part of our agreement with Team Health, requested that Meharry attending physicians be hired so that the students could continue to train inpatient under the leadership of the attending physicians, which Team Health also supplies medical staff and teaching education on that platform for both family medicine as well as internal medicine. Our OB program, we provide all of the staff, all of the technology, all the equipment, and the support services for that program. Meharry just has to bring their students into that area and train and educate them. The space also as well, which is space that we lease from them, but there is no chargeback. So I'm not sure when you talk about things that we're not supporting Meharry or we're not being good partners, I'm not quite sure what it is that we need to do in order to demonstrate that we are, because anytime they're ready to have a discussion about additional services or expanded services, we're certainly there ready to have that conversation.
I just wanted to make a comment on that. I know previously the way this used to work was, and Dr. Webb's right, sometimes Meharry would say, we can't find a provider, we've searched all over, we can't provide the service anymore. And then the hospital would go out and recruit their own individuals. I think it had always been almost like a right of first refusal that we talk to Meharry first and they say, we can't meet this obligation before we moved on. And it just seems now like we're bringing in more people when Meharry is saying that they can still provide the service. I mean, that's kind of some of the feedback that I've gotten.
And I honestly haven't heard that any of the services that we brought in, that anyone has said, we would like to bring that service in for you. Obviously, it would be certainly less costly to us if someone brought those services in. Now, the one thing that's got to happen is that anytime someone is coming into your hospital to provide care to your patients, you're basically taking on that responsibility from a quality and outcome standpoint. So you have to adhere to a certain level or a certain standard of care, and that's something that we have to be very cognizant of because we must show a high quality of care at all times in order to continue to attract individuals, not just the indigent who we take care of, but we're also in the market and the economic model of generating a margin so that we can remain fiscally sustainable. I mean, so we have to take all of that into consideration when we're operating. And I don't think that the case was that they didn't have the providers. They had the providers when those services were removed. I beg to differ on that one. And in some cases, they were providers that were coming through a subcontract with Vanderbilt, as with the cardiologist. So, it's been a mixed bag of why Meharry has decided to move in that direction. And again, our primary responsibility is to make sure that we're being proactive and caring for this patient population, because we do not want to contribute to health disparities or health inequities in this community that is already disproportionately affecting certain populations. And we don't want to contribute to that by just being dependent on others to come and offer services when they want and then leave when they want. We have to be consistent lest we contribute and exacerbate disparities in this community.
If I may just add to, and I think it's important that you brought this up. I didn't quite understand the scope of what you were discussing, but maybe rather than having individual discussions, we're having this discussion here. Why don't we work on getting the parties that are involved in the same room so that we can get something productive done? It's been my observation, being in the city for a long time, that a lot of people say a lot of different things to different folks, and then it gets legs, and we're not basing things on facts, and then it becomes. It seems like we're not communicating together and people aren't working together, and then that just seems like it has the possibility to create more friction. And so I think from a productivity standpoint, and I do think, again, I think it's important that's brought up, but I would think that to move things forward, we start talking about, collaboration and getting the appropriate parties and people that want to do so in the same room.
Well, I think that's the exact point. It's a complicated relationship. Let's just lay that out there. But we do need more input, I think, from Meharry of how we can meet their needs and at the same time maintain the standards that we expect from this hospital.
Okay.
I think really what I'm saying is that we do need more input than we've had.
I think it's just important that we get all the parties involved. I think we can all say from one side or the other. I think people that are involved need to get in the same room and again, let's hear the other side of the story and have that conversation rather than us talking about it in silos. I don't think we'll ever get anything done that way.
We've attempted this in the past.
Well, let's do it this time.
Yeah, well, it's easier said than done.
Well, what were some of the barriers so that we know what we're working with essentially?
Dr. Webb?
Well, let me say this. I agree with you, Dr. Martin. I think that it's fair to have to hear from our partner in this space, in the board space, and I'll honor that. We will create opportunity in our board meeting so that you can hear from Harry, and that's fair. Now I'll say this. We do have contractual opportunities, and I think when we really dig into those, we have to think about, this particular board has to think about our fiduciary responsibility to this hospital. And so sometimes those can conflict. They really can. And so I think that continued negotiations have to happen. Somebody mentioned the right of first refusal. Is that a contractual obligation? Do you feel that's a contractual obligation?
Well, I'm not even sure anyone ever understood what that really meant. It was supposed to be in one of the PSAs, and that was what the big controversy and discussion was about in us, agreeing to a PSA is if I am a hospital and someone else is going to have the right to hire the providers that are going to work in my hospital, how much control do I have over the quality of care? Because if those employees are not, or if those individuals are not individuals that are principals or agents of this principal organization, then you've got your agents serving a different principle. And that really creates challenges for you. That would be like Vanderbilt actually, as the hospital, allowing another entity to hire the physicians for them that's going to come in and provide services. Can you imagine that? If that's the case, then why would you want to do that to the public hospital? Are those people not as deserving?
Dr. Webb, most of the hospitals in town, the physicians are not, most of the physicians are not employed by the hospital.
No.
They're in private practice, and they do accept, they do have standards. So I don't think, you need to insist that the standards are high in what you expect for your patients. But this is at the St. Thomas hospitals, at the Centennial hospitals, the majority are not employed by the hospitals traditionally and currently. So
yeah, I understand that model. I've worked in that model for years. That's certainly changing. Most physicians now are becoming employed.
It is
by
changing.
I think you know that. Yeah. So we can't regress that back into those days when you were in private practice. But today, most physicians are hired by those entities.
New
I think
hires.
we all know that.
That is true.
Yeah.
I like Dr. Miller's approach. I think to try to rehash what has happened in the past with Meharry is not going to be as useful as taking the approach he's suggesting of how can we help each other? The relationship is not good. If it's important in the future, then we need to work on it.
I'm not, listen, I don't want to come across as being resistant to working in any way we can with Meharry. I do not want to present that image at all. Anytime we're ready to have that conversation, I will be glad to do that.
Let me correct something, because this is being viewed by the entire city, and we don't want individuals who are coming to this hospital for care to think that the relationship is not good. There's opportunities for improvement, but when you suggest that the relationship is not good, it might suggest about the quality of care. So I just want to be cautious how we frame this. I really want us to agenda item this, because we can't take any action tonight on this at all. So I really want us to agenda item this so we can have the appropriate people in the room. And some of the conversations we in terms of contractual obligations and those things may need to be in a different setting. So I just want us to be cautious and careful, because again, we have individuals who are counting on this place for care, and we don't want to give the wrong impression that because our relationship is not good, that it may affect the care. I think there's obviously opportunities for improvement, and I hear you, Dr. Martin. I hear you, Dr. Miller. I think we should dig into this, but I would rather us do it as an agenda item and then invite some Meharry individuals into our board meeting. Now, we can't meet with them with more than one board member, but they can come into this space and we can have those conversations, and we can hear directly from them as well. So that way we're not guessing about some things we may have heard or may have seen. So.
Just a quick question. Do we have somebody dedicated specifically on staff who handles any exterior relationship, whether it be with Vanderbilt, St. Thomas, or with Meharry? And I'm just wondering who kind of owns that space and if that's something that could be created if it's not already structured.
We have an entire medical staff infrastructure that deals with all medical staff.
No. I'm talking about staff, like one specific person who's kind of like let's call it a community relationship person, and whether that they would necessarily own that space in dealing with Meharry on an ongoing and regular basis, rather than when these pointed things may come up, that would be a more proactive approach rather than kind of an after the fact conversation. So anyways, I'm just throwing that out there as an opportunity to potentially look at a position that might be developed. And I'm sure multiple staff probably help with that, but if you could title it that, give them the tools and empowerment to create that position that would allow for a direct contact within this institution to have a direct contact with other institutions. So that just on that side note, and I'll stop.
Thank you.
You want an answer to that? Was that a question?
Recommendation.
Okay. Well, I think the piece of that might not be as well known by the general public is the level of activities that occur on a daily basis between Meharry representatives and Nashville General in this setting all day, every day. That is absolute necessity, and it does occur. And I think there's a misperception about the actual relationship because we interact daily. We could not carry out the activities as an index teaching hospital if that were not the case. So there's all levels of interactions, and they are not strained interactions. They're very fluid. So I think it would help maybe if the board could come in and see some of the interactions before passing judgment at maybe the leadership level.
Mr. Chairman, I've heard all of this, and I'm going to sound pretty naive here, I suspect, but we're talking about specific issues in the relationship, and that word keeps coming up, relationship. And it seems to me there were three words that we're not talking about that get to the substance of all of this. One is relationship. One is collaboration, which Dr. Fisher brought up. And the third is plain old communication. And it sounds like it's not just the board communicating or understanding. It's about, if there's clearly something here, and it's not about the individual issues, because those seem to be dealt with one-on-one each time. But do we have the kind of relationship, and I'm just asking rhetorically, do we have the kind of relationship with our executive team and the executive team at Meharry to sit in a room on a routine basis and discuss these kinds of things and resolve them routinely with casual as well as formal conversation? And it seems to me, and again, being naive, I don't know, maybe it exists, but that seems to be the missing piece here, is the relationship, not the specifics of each initiative, but the atmosphere around this relationship with Meharry. And that's what I think we're talking about here.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I think that I think there's room for improvement. None of us is naive to think that Meharry does not have some concerns, right? There are some concerns, and there may be some concerns from General Hospital. I agree. I think relationship, conversations, collaboration, those things helped us to get to that point. I want us to just approach it though, in a way where we allow them to come in. Since you brought it up, allow them to come into this space and to share some of those things that they think that the board should hear. And I'm open to that. I think that leads us to some healing process in terms of good faith, in terms of work with each other. So, but what Dr. Webb said, I think was important to note, is that there's a lot of things that happen daily between the two entities that points to appropriate care that takes place in this space.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make one comment. I guess I've been around long enough to remember when representatives from Meharry attended this meeting on a routine basis. At least one representative from the executive team at all times. And what used to happen is if they had any concerns, even though they're not actual members of the board, but during the public comment part of the board meeting, if they had any issues that needed to come up, that was at least a place where we could get it kind of out in the open and have some discussions about it, or at least start thinking about something that might be a concern. I think Dr. Hildreth has been here at least one time I can remember, maybe close to the end of last year, but that used to be something that happened on a routine basis. And I remember when Dr. Webb first got here, that he and Dr. Hildreth used to meet on a routine basis, almost on a weekly basis. And I think over time, we've kind of gotten siloed off some. But just going back to how all this came about from the beginning, and as long ago as it was, the whole idea was that there was a collaboration between the old Hubbard Hospital and Nashville General Hospital. They had so many patients, and Meharry had so many patients that they thought, well, we can all just get together and work together. And I think that's just kind of gotten lost in all this. But it's nothing we're going to solve now, but I do think communication is the key. And I guess an example that popped in my mind was, we're talking about relocation of the hospital. In those names of participants for that discussion, is anybody from Meharry included on that list?
Absolutely. I sent a personal communication to Dr. Hildreth that we had been requested by the mayor to put together a committee. And so he received that, and he stated that it would be forthcoming. And so I think that's a part of, and also in planning for the hospital, the space planning, we invited Meharry leadership to the table to be a part of identifying some of the elements that they would want as a part of the teaching hospital that would benefit their programs. They came to the table, they gave their feedback. So I guess my point is that there's continuous activity going on and discussion going on between Meharry. It's healthy activity. You know, I get a little confused when I hear all of these discussions about why don't you guys get along? It's confusing to me because of all of the work that we do together, collaboratively, in the same setting. So it might be helpful to bring that together closer, so maybe we can put some of that on the table and see what is really happening here.
All right, any more discussion around this? Okay. I promise you we will agenda item this for our next meeting and have representatives from Meharry to be a part of this discussion. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Been moved and proper second. All in favor, vote sign aye. We are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.